my name is Ash Morris. I'm the Director of Swimming at Hamilton Aquatics. I've been there for almost 11 years now. This is my 11th season, although it isn't complete. It's been a big, long journey along the way. We partner with a lot of schools. We started with 1 or 2 schools, and now we're working with close to 35 schools, I think. So it's been a big old journey. I was one of the first members of staff, and now obviously people know about the size of Hamilton, but it's a big scale. We've got over 100 admin and swimming teachers and swimming coaches. So it is a big program, but we are proud of what we've got and try and keep it kind of as swimmer centered as we can, really. Yeah,
it's an absolute beast. I actually know down the next one was I wasn't aware that you were one of the first ones to come into it. How did that come about? Did you know the owner, or how did the whole thing come about?
Yeah, so originally I swam with the owner, Chris Tidy, when I was young. I think I was 14 or 15, and he was just coming back from university at City of Cambridge Swimming Club. So I kind of knew him through that. And then as I started my journey into coaching, he was already out here and had set up Hamilton. I had a few decent results with a few kids back in the UK, and he needed someone to come and look after the squad program in Dubai. So originally it was a 2-year plan, and here I am 10.5 years later. So.
That 2-year plan, one of them. What's your kind of day-to-day? What takes up your days?
In a normal world, where we're not in lockdown, my days, we have early starts. We because swimming's such a kind of high frequency sport. Like my elite swimmers swim 9 times a week, so obviously they swim before school and after school 3 times a week to do a double. So yeah, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, I'm up about 4:10 to get to poolside for around just before 5 o'clock out of the schools. So that's pretty tough. I used to come back and nap afterwards, but now I actually just plan my admin. So I actually found a few years into it that I was at my peak, like after the sessions in the mornings. So actually now I've learned to kind of go back, do my admin for a couple of hours, and when I start to crash, either have a nap or have a coffee, one of the two. But yeah, like day to day, living in Dubai and UAE, it's you get different challenges every day, every week. So I wouldn't say I've done 1 week, which is a normal week since I've been here, to be honest.
The elite swimmers, how many's in that program?
So at the moment we've had 16 swimmers. They are kind of age 15 to 18 plus. A lot of them, kind of my goal is to try and take them to that next little journey, next little level in terms of either international swimming or onto university, where hopefully they can kind of study and swim together. We've had, as you know, quite a few kids go off to the US in the last few years, which has been really, really good. We even had them come back on a Zoom call last week, which was awesome because I think they realise now how lucky the kids in Dubai have things with facilities and opportunities, and they've come back, and I think that's given them a good grounding, to be honest. We're quite big on developing people rather than swimmers, so I think we have helped as part of their journey, and that's probably something I'm probably more proud of than the results themselves.
Who are the guys that are over in the States just now?
At the moment, we've got Lewis Burris, who's at South Carolina. We've got Jacob Carl, who's at Indiana. Cameron Matthews is at Princeton. Joe Page is at Yale. Lucy Agnew, who's at UCLA. And then we've got 2 more going to Brown in September this year. So it's a little bit of a conveyor belt now. Francesca Falzon-Young is at UCSD. So we've got a lot of different swimmers who have kind of gone on that journey. And I think the way the US system's set up, with the ability to give scholarships to the swimmers to help financially, and for them to study at good academic universities, a lot of those, and to continue swimming, I think they just go hand in hand. Whereas not all countries offer that, unfortunately.
What's the feedback from them? How are they getting on?
No, they're doing great. They're really enjoying it. I think it's hard to, I coach a lot of those kids for 8-9 years. And it's hard when you listen to the same voice all the time, to continue that journey. So I think change was good for a lot of them. doesn't like hit my ego or anything. I think it's good for them and the next part of their journey. And it's the next level in terms of it's harder. It's different people. There's international students. There's obviously a lot of Americans. It's a bigger system. I had a squad of 15 to 18 kids here, whereas they're going into groups of 30 guys but they have 4 assistant coaches, and they're racing every week against in dual meets against different teams and different colleges. So I think the dynamic is very, very different. And I think you can kind of see why the USA is so successful at swimming and why they've kind of been leading the rest of the world, because the structure they've got in place, even if they're making 2 and breaking 1,000, you're going to get great swimmers from it.
I actually had noted down, I had a little look at the Olympics medal table for swimming over the past however many years, and the individuals with the most medals is just American flag, American flag, American flag, American flag. Yeah. And you think that's because of the collegiate system? Yeah.
I think there's been six events since 2004 where at the US trials, the top 3 could have won gold, silver, bronze at the games.
Really?
But obviously you're only allowed to take 2 swimmers per event, so they get gold and silver. So the depth they've got is unreal.
Wow. And is that pulling the guys that were at Hamilton up? Like, you'll be able to see the times, obviously.
Yeah, they race in short course yards and we have short course meters, which is a little bit different. So not many of them have actually been able to race long course meters yet, which is probably a fair comparison. But it's allowed them to work on their turns, because obviously a yards pool is, effectively a 22, 23 meter pool. So they've had to be better at their turns. So those, and then there's high pressure situations. In UAE, we're lucky there's a few clubs which are competitive, but we have to go outside of the UAE to kind of compete in a tougher environment. And you can't afford in the US to have a bad race. You have to be on it. And if you can't do it for yourself, you're doing it for your teammates and you're doing it for your points. So you're absolutely got to be on your game every week.
So all their races are short course in yards?
Yeah. It's a very old-fashioned system. But basically, they build their pools, a lot of them 50 meters long and 25 yards wide. So they'll race a lot of those pools, and a lot of the training will be done in short course yards.
Right.
And I think because it's been such a successful thing and it's such a big history and legacy behind it, they've kind of been reluctant to change the meters. So even like they have short course world championships in a 25 meter pool, a lot of the big Americans don't even come for it. They don't really know what short course meters is. So they prioritize short course yards in the US or long course meters on the FINA or Olympic stage. Right.
I've met Lewis Burrows, so he's the one I'm kind of got in my head when I'm asking this. But have you had a chance to see his times for the events that he does and compare them to what he's getting now, or is he just doing the short course?
Yeah, so he actually raced long course at the USA Nationals in August. His times he did put him second in Britain ever. Second currently and 5th in Britain ever. So he's behind Duncan Scott. He's bang on the Olympic qualifying time. So all he had to do was equal his performance at the British trials in April, but obviously they were cancelled. So he was in a real good shout to qualify on the individual event, but certainly the relay.
Good for him, eh?
Yeah, no, it's been a really good kind of journey for him.
What must he be? Was he about 20 now?
Yeah, he's 20 in February. Yeah.
My next question was going to be the guys who are at college and also your elite level guys who are, they've got goals and they've got big competitions in mind, whether it's nationals or Europeans, this kind of thing. What are they doing now? And what does the next, for the Olympics, obviously everything's changed to a year further forward, but yeah, just now, what are they doing?
Well, we've gone on a bit of a journey. It's been a little bit up and down. I think originally when everything was closed down here, we were one of the first countries in the world to do it. So at that point, it was, a lot of tears, a lot of stress and anxieties. We were looking at going training camps to Spain, to UK, wherever, just to try and get some training in, because at that point, all the competitions are going ahead, all the trials for either the Olympics or for the, a lot of them were trying to get on European junior teams and things like that for the summer, which are now cancelled. There was a lot of anxiety at that point. So we were trying to find solutions. But obviously, as other countries have caught up and everything's cancelled, it's obviously a relief for me as a coach, but obviously for the swimmers. So, now everyone's in the same boat, we can kind of take a second to breathe a little bit. We had a little bit of input with home workouts originally, but now we're leading them online on Zoom. So throughout the whole program, from the younger kids up to the older kids, whether it's a 30-minute session or the older guys who are doing still an hour and a quarter kind of gym work with various different objects in their house, we're just doing our best. I'm lucky enough that I've got a full-time strength and conditioning coach, Kathy. So she's been leading a lot of the elite guys and the older guys, which takes that stress off of me because that's not my strength. Which has also allowed me to be a different voice for other things we've been doing on Zoom. So when we've had the group meetings, we've been doing things on leadership. It's allowed us to have a breather in terms of doing things we might not have had time for in a normal week with school and with training. So, we've been able to show video examples of things. We've been able to engage as a group, and the kids have been fantastic at that. And I think they've really, really enjoyed it. I think if this goes on for a year, it might be a bit of a stretch, but I think for a short block, it's been really, really enjoyable. And in terms of planning moving forwards, we have no idea. Like, I want to map something out. If someone told me we can get back in July or December, that's fine, because I can plan backwards from that. But at the moment, we're just trying to give quite a general program. And when I kind of know we'll be allowed back in some swimming pools, then we can start ramping things up and planning and periodizing the training a little bit more.
What about the guys who were hoping to go to college after summer? Did they already have times? Where's that at? So
yeah, I think four going to university in September. Again, a bit of an unknown because some of the US colleges have already announced that potentially they won't accept people onto campus until January. So potentially I'm going to have, and plus I've got another 4 or 5 who are back in the UAE with their families at the moment. So potentially I've got a bit of a senior group until Christmas, as well as my next kind of generation of elite guys to balance out a little bit if we're allowed in pools. Or potentially they could all be off in September as planned. So again, I really don't know, can't plan, but potentially I've got a bigger group, which I might have to split into 2 for a few months.
Yeah, it's just a nightmare. Obviously Hamilton, you're trying to get these guys to reach their goals and maximize their potential, but it's a business as well. How's the business side of things going?
It's been really tough because I think when people look at like a bigger academy, they think, oh, they'll survive. But actually, we've got more people on payroll, we've got more facilities to pay for. So we've had to be really, really smart. A lot of it's obviously been out of my hands and with kind of my bosses and finance team. And they've been really supportive of the swimmers. They've allowed us, to be on part pay and to be able to deliver like the virtual camps to the kids to keep them going, because I think we've always set out to be kind of a swimmer-centered program anyway. And I think we want to make sure that the kids are, 1, looked after now, but 2, there's not such a big gap when we do get back into things that we can kind of pick up. Even we tried to offer things to the really little kids, like the 3-4-year-olds, with some online learning things and some fun and game stuff the teachers have put together. So just trying to keep people engaged, let people know we're thinking of them a little bit as well.
How have the parents been?
Honestly, amazing. Like they've been so supportive. I think even just things outside of the swimming community, it's just brought people together a little bit more. I think like everyone's just helping each other. The amount of Zoom calls I've been on in the last 2 weeks, whether it's to parents, whether it's to the coaching team, whether it's to like we've had some of the world-class coaches on Zoom. We've literally been thinking, right, what's CPD for us? We've been cheekily emailing like some like world-class coaches who have coached multiple Olympic medalists, and they've just given up their time and come and done Zoom sessions for us. And like last night I was on for 2 hours with a guy called Greg Troy, who's Caleb Dressel's coach. And he 2 hours of his time he just gave up to do a massive Q&A. And I just think like the whole world has come together a little bit more and a little bit stronger. And that includes our swimmers and parents.
Great. Everybody's twiddling their thumbs as well, so that helps.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Like, without making excuses, you do put some CPD stuff off sometimes because you're just so full on in the working life. You forget to give time to yourself sometimes. And I've just used like the spare time where I've been bored just to be a bit selfish and just try and educate a little bit more and stimulate myself. So I think personally, I'm probably going back a better coach, and the problem with me right now is I'm like twitching, ready to go. That's the issue.
And you can't get in the pool. Who impressed you particularly out of the people that you've spoken to or listened to?
Greg Troy was amazing because I think he's close. He's in his 60s, close to 70, and he's still coaching. He's coaching a pro team. He's done 20 years at the most successful program in the US in Florida. He's coached, I think, over 10 Olympic champions, world record holders, and just the wealth of knowledge he had when he talks. He was just off the cuff, and it was just flowing. And at points he had to stop himself short because he just had story after story, and it just put things in perspective to me of just how much experience and knowledge he's got, and how passionate he was about sharing that. And I was thinking, in 40 years, if I'm that passionate, then wow, amazing.
Who's his main swimmers been?
At the moment, it's Caleb Dressel, who was on track. He's kind of the next Phelps labelled as, but he's more of a sprinter, and he's unreal. He's already broken world records. He's absolutely unbelievable. And previously, he had Ryan Lochte, who always he's world record holder himself. He's won Olympic medals, but he was always a little bit in Phelps' shadow.
Bit rock and roll, isn't he, Lochte?
Yeah, he's a wild one. So Greg Troy last night spoke about that and his experiences with Ryan Lochte and being a bit of a party animal. So that was great. We had another guy, Bill Sweetenham, on one of them as well, who he's an Australian, and he went over to Britain after a very bad Sydney Olympics for Britain to basically shake it up, and he was responsible for turning swimming coaching into a professional sport. He got rid of volunteer coaches, put people on payrolls. So he actually, I think he said 30% of his budget annually was invested in coach education, and he sent all of the top coaches in Britain to the US and to Australia to learn from the best coaches there.
Really?
Not just me, a lot of people, but firmly believe he's the main reason Britain are quite successful at swimming now, because although he's not been in the system for 10, 11 years, he's put those foundations in place for Duncan Scott, for Adam Beatty, for all those guys now to prosper from it. Yeah. So he was amazing, full of wisdom.
So had he been involved with the Aussie Olympics team previously?
Yeah, and he still is now. He's like a consultant, I think, for Australia and for Argentina. Again, I think he's in his 70s, but full of knowledge. And he was known for being ruthless, absolutely ruthless, and changing culture within Britain and Australia. So he was great. Like, one of the stories was he wanted to get rid of a few bad eggs on the British team, the swimmers. So he bought them all a load of Big Macs on a training camp. Said, right, help yourselves, guys. And anyone who took one, he sent home. just ridiculous but brutal things. So, that was quite funny. Yeah,
it's interesting. Hopefully, a few left them. Otherwise, you'd have nobody there.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people quit. Like, some of Britain's top swimmers quit, and at the time, everyone's like, "What is this guy doing? Like, he's a lunatic." But all of a sudden, he went from. He quoted on the Zoom session that he brought in a policy where it used to be top 2 in Britain, regardless, they go to the Worlds or the Olympics per event. And he basically brought in a selection criteria where you had to be top 12 in the world. It doesn't matter if we don't take anyone.
Yeah.
And everyone kicked off. First year it was tough. By the second year, they'd had more swimmers in the top 12 in the world than they'd ever had in the top 20 in the world.
Really?
So it just shifted. And people just stepped up. And I think even Bill Finesse, who's the head coach of Britain now, has done something similar. So I think you've got to be within top 6 of the world on the current Olympic or world year or the year before to be considered. And those qualifying times he's put in place, instead of just having a FINA A time, it's actually harder in Britain because you've got to be on par with top kind of 6 to 10 in the world, I think it is. So basically they take people for medals or finals, they don't take them for a nice holiday.
Wow. You can see the thinking, to be fair.
Yeah, and it's worked. Honestly, people have stepped up in Britain. And there's always people who have a bad meet at British trials. And I think they've been pretty good at that. Like if there's substance behind it, whether it's mental issue or whether it's physical or illness, they've kind of worked with that a little bit. They always have a couple of wild cards which they'll use at their discretion, which I think is fair.
Yeah. Out of the Hamilton alumni, who was in the running thereabouts for the Olympics this year?
I think, to be honest, it's probably only Lewis Barroso who was in the running for the Olympics. He was dead certain. There are other swimmers who are really, really close. But I think it would have come down to whether everything went their way, whether they had a really good meet at their trials. People like Jacob Carl, Francesca Young. So I think people were kind of close. But I think the great thing about now, and again, I had a young group this year, and I think Tokyo was really, really unrealistic for them. But all of a sudden, I've got a year, if we can get back in a pool, to work with these kids now. And like Victoria Beghelli's half a second off an Olympic cut. Molly Main, her percentage improvement last season, she's a few seconds off the 200 breaststroke. But there's a few kids who are kind of all of a sudden, even if for a relay or whatever, who it's in reach. And I'm not saying they could or they will, but it's a possibility, whereas I think 2020 was a year too early for them.
Brilliant for them then.
Yeah.
Out of interest, a lot of, the main guys, the guys who are going to be winning Olympic golds, are they in the pool just now, or is it a write-off for everybody?
So I think it's very different. So originally Hungary were the last, I think they were the last country still going in terms of their swimming. So they had put all their national team in one place. But I think 13 people came down with coronavirus.
Really?
So that quickly got stopped. Was it 13 or there was 13 swimmers? I can't remember. And so I think different people are doing different things and improvising. A couple of my swimmers here are lucky that they've got kind of 10-meter pools at their home. Mm-hmm. But there's only so much you can do with a 10-meter pool. And a lot of Bill Sweetnam said, the Australians have ordered containers and put water in them. So I think they're 15-meter containers, mm-hmm. and they've attached the bungees, the tethers onto them. So they're just doing free swimming on a bungee. A couple of coaches have done that with the swimmers in the UK as well.
Do you think the ones that can't get into the pool, do you think that'll be the difference come next summer? Is it going to be the difference, or can you do enough in the gym on land?
I think there's two ways of looking at it. I'm worried a little bit for my swimmers just because they're going through puberty. So a lot of things can happen, particularly with the girls. A lot of changes, which as long as they're on top of their training routine, I'm not worried. And I think most of them are. But everyone kind of develops in different ways. So I think anyone who's kind of going through a bit of a physical change at the moment, that might be a danger for some of them. But I think like the males, it takes 6 weeks to build up a little bit of pool fitness again. And if they're doing all their home workouts, there's going to be a foundation there. Maybe some of the real big guys who need to lift heavy in the gym and things like that, maybe they'll lose a little bit on the gym. But I think a lot of people are seeing it as opportunities to work on things which might have been a missing thing and they might have overlooked, whether it's mental skills, whether it's physical things on the land and identifying different things. So I like to think that actually if people can get back in pools on time, it might be weirdly an advantage in some aspects and for some swimmers.
Yeah.
But I'd be worried if I had, if Katie Ledecky or Ariana Titmus, some of the leading distance females in the world, who, if we're honest, they need to swim 70, 80,000 meters a week. I
was going to say, you would think for the shorter races, these guys are maybe okay, but the long distance ones, they've got to be putting the miles in the tank every day, haven't they?
Yeah, and I think it'll be different. And what I'm a little bit worried about in the UAE is that because sport hasn't evolved as much here, we do have a lot of support from Dubai Sports Council and different people, but I'm a little bit worried that we kind of just have a flat rule across the board and don't look into things a little bit earlier, like getting groups of five swimmers or 5 footballers in a controlled environment and put some measures in place to protect them, mm-hmm. And others. I'm a little bit worried that we'll just draw the line.
One size fits all.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried. Whereas I think, I know a couple of the British national centres, when it's deemed safe in Britain, they're going to have 4 or 5 of their guys go in at a time, back-to-back sessions. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the world's going to start doing that soon. Now they've had a bit of a time to breathe work out what's happening. They can put things in place. And I know, like, even Italy and Spain, they're still in trouble with the COVID, but I know they're looking at some of their top sports athletes being able to get access and permission by the government.
And can you lobby the Dubai Sports Council to try and do this, or have you not got that?
I don't have enough contact, to be honest. I know they were very supportive of us through the whole thing at the beginning, and I'm sure they will be, but I think there's bigger things to life than sport in some people's eyes. And I don't know how high it is on the priority list for some people, even though it is quite high on mine.
Yeah, I know, it's a tough one. Okay, I'm going to ask you a few questions just on a little bit bigger picture, swimming in general, and your kind of philosophy as a coach. First of all, where do you sit on the nature versus nurture debate?
Oh my God, we've got an hour now. Nature versus nurture. I think people, in terms of mindsets, are a product of what they're brought up in. I think swimming pretty much comes down to mindset and genetics. I'm a big advocate and encourager of people who want to do something and have a dream, but ultimately I think it comes down to your genetic capabilities and how you adapt to certain types of training, particularly in swimming. I also think certain nationalities, genetics combined, are more adaptable to certain sports as well. I think you see that in a lot of sports. Taking any race or nationality aside, there are certain types of people in certain sports which flourish and are really adaptable and potentially have a lot more like natural genetics and capabilities than others are born with. So I think that's a massive thing. But I think you've got to be able to tap into that a little bit as well. I think previously sports, athletics, swimming, athletics is probably 10 years ahead of swimming. They think that you need to categorize and everybody in the same thing. And I think sports now moving still within LTAD, but a little bit more specialist. Like, for example, swimming, there won't be another Michael Phelps win 8 gold medals because now the 50 freestyler isn't even swimming the 100.
Really? It's way more specialist.
Yeah. And people who used to do the 200 and 400, which is a bit of an anaerobic and aerobic crossover event, now it's just one or the other, or there's a bit of a clash. So I think swimming's becoming more specialist. Sprinters are more defined. And I think people used to be scared of labeling people as sprinters or distance swimmers or anything. But in actual fact, now I think people see that as a positive thing and it's something they can tap into. If some people are lucky enough to have genetics testing and physiology things along their journey and within their training plan. And I think a lot of smart coaches out there are tapping into that across all sorts of sports.
Just on the nature side, who would you say out of the swimmers that you've coached has had the most natural potential?
Lewis Burrows has, again, genetically, naturally the most relaxed feel for the water. He's 6'4", doesn't build much lactic acid, and he enjoys racing. So I think that's a massive thing. So I think one thing which he'll admit, so it's not something I can't say, is it's probably his mental side, which has been the thing he's had to work hard at. And he has worked hard in the pool as well. But I think, I don't want to say this to too many swimmers, but he's the kind of kid who probably could have done it without half the training. He was just that naturally gifted. And in fact, some of his best swims he'd done when he'd been out of training for a little bit for school or whatever it was. Or, he came back after World Juniors in 2017, had a few weeks off. Then he went to the US to do college visits. Then he came back and I gave him another few days off. And then he was on different time zone and struggling to sleep. And I think he only did 4 or 5 training sessions. Then he raced. And I was hesitant whether I should let him race because I didn't want it to be detrimental to kind of his mindset. And he raced. And I think it was when he went all-time fastest on the 100 free in a short course pool for his age. So I was like, okay.
Scary. Did he play any other sports, or has he been purely swimming from day one?
Yeah, it's a weird one. He was just swimming. I'm actually a big advocate, although maybe some school teachers might disagree with me, of kids participating in a lot of different sports, particularly at primary age. I do like them to cut down as they get a little bit older and specialise a little bit more, but particularly at primary age, I'm a big believer they should be doing multiple sports and getting as much kind of cross-training and athletic stimulation as they can, because I think some of my best swimmers in the past have come from gymnastics backgrounds, from doing different sports. As long as they commit at the right age and kind of almost pyramid their training, I think it can be a massive advantage to have a different skill set at a young age.
Yeah.
I think there's also an argument of whether kids do too much at that young age as well, but that's personal choice.
Okay, so on the flip side then, who has been the hardest working swimmer that you ever worked with?
A few spring to mind, so I'll cheat there. Velimir Stefanovic and Adam Beatty are probably the hardest working senior swimmers I've ever come across. Velimir swam for us under Chris Tidy for 8-9 years, and he did some unbelievable training and was just did things out of the ordinary.
Like
Adam
what?
Beatty just in terms of, he never said no to anything. He'd do anything Chris asked him to do. And he would just, in terms of his training times and things he was capable of doing within training, he was tough enough just to find the extra step up, no matter whether he was tired, broken down, tough day at school, or as he got older in life.
What was his events?
He made the final in London for the 200 fly, but then he won European Championships on 200 and 400 freestyle, so he actually switched. But very much endurance background as well. Adam Beatty has been the best kind of swimmer I've ever seen train, who's not one of our swimmers, He is an absolute animal, and there's a reason he's taken swimming to the next level in his events, because he was able to swim at a higher frequency and tempo than everyone else because he's fitter and he's stronger. Simple as that. Like, anyone who's tried it since, because they haven't had that work ethic or fitness, haven't been able to hold on to that tempo of racing he swims at. So he's an unbelievable.
What kind of thing is he doing? What's his session look like, for example?
So he swims, I think, 10 times a week on a main training block. And last time I checked, he was doing big gym sessions 4 times a week, as well as other bits. So he's full on. He's maximised his kind of training. Even his coach Mel has told me before, she's been advised by physiologists that maybe he's doing too much, but it works for them. He doesn't get injured ever. He's really on top of it. He's improving. He enjoys it. And I think, as well as what they believe he needs physically, I believe they think it helps him mentally. If they cut back on what he's been doing, I think his mindset would maybe feel like he's not doing enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with a lot of tough swimmers and other sports guys when they get a little bit older. But when you hear the stories of what Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Ryan Giggs did in the last couple of years, they don't train as much as they used to, and you just have to be a little bit smart about it. I think I read something about how Federer doesn't do as much anymore, and he incorporates different things, Pilates, yoga. Realistically, he's not going to improve anymore with his ball skills.
Yeah.
He's maintaining and
yeah.
So in terms of the hardest, toughest swimmers I've coached, one now, Bea Varley. She's one of the fastest swimmers in Britain, junior swimmers in Britain at the moment on the distance events, and she was a bit of an anomaly in my program because I've got either younger swimmers or more sprint kind of based swimmers as well. But she's been doing a few weeks where she does above 70,000 meters a week of distance training in the pool, plus her gym. And she's had rapid improvements. Molly Main, who won 2 bronzes at the Europeans last year, the juniors, she's an unbelievably hard worker as well. And I think she's an amazing talent to look out for as well. Jacob Carl, who's gone out to Indiana, I don't think he would have survived at Indiana if he hadn't taken a bit of a beating from me, to be honest. He really worked hard, put in the meters, 10 sessions a week as well. And I think that gave him a bit of a robust grounding to kind of move on to the United States as well.
And when you're doing the programming for these guys, is it a bit of guesswork and you don't know if they're going to be able to handle that? Do you then have to scale it back or scale it up if they're cruising it, or how do you do that?
Yeah, I always say a swim coach is a jack of all trades. I'm not a nutritionist, not a psychologist, not a physiologist. I have to gauge little bits and pieces and rely on those experts. So whether it's Kathy for the strength and conditioning, Marco previously, rope in, like we've got Sarah Zakovic, who helps us a little bit with the mental skills training. Don't have an actual nutritionist at the moment, which I need to source a little bit and try and help. But again, this is a good time to do it. So my job really is to kind of gauge in line with what the swimmers set their goals at the start of the season. And I always say to my swimmers, like, if you don't like something, change your goals, because you've given me your goals. I'm quite good at engaging with them in terms of I'll ask what they think. I'm not scared to do that as a coach. I'll ask what they need, and we'll try and do things which I know stimulates them mentally and physically in line with their goals, because swimming's a brutal sport. It's a weird sport. You don't do a lot of other sports in terms of the frequency of training which you do swimming, and it's a little bit, it defies physiology and long-term athlete development a little bit in terms of the frequency of training and the duration of sessions. Like, kids are in the pool for 2 hours and then they get out, have a snack and go upstairs to do the gym work. It's really tough.
Yeah. Just back to Adam Peaty. Were you aware of him when he was a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old? Was he a sensation from way back when, or, you know, where is he?
Adam Peaty was, I believe, I think he qualified for first nationals age 14 or 15. Mel Marshall, who's been his main coach the whole time, she picked him up at age 14 and 15 around that time. And I think he went from like a 1 minute 1800 breaststroke, and he was like not even top 10 in Britain for his age. So all of a sudden, age 17, I think he qualified for European Juniors. I think that was his first British team. I think age 18 or 19, he won medals at Commonwealth Games. And it was just like this massive progression. You know, 56 seconds for 100 metres breaststroke right now, and no one else has been faster than, I think, 58 and 100 breast. Percentage-wise, was the biggest gap between second place out of every event. So even like Katie Ledecky and Phelps was still racing at that time, the gap wasn't as big between them and the other competitors. Really?
So it wasn't that he was really born with it, he just took it by the scruff of the neck and went for it, maximised his potential.
Yeah, exactly. I think, again, genetically, you look at him, he's great shape. He's got, we call breaststroke legs. Breaststrokers sometimes walk a little bit differently with their feet turned out. They generally, a lot of them can't do the other three strokes. It's a really weird stroke. And sometimes we laugh at the breaststrokers a little bit, but I think that combined with one of the best coaches in the world, Mel Marshall, she's unbelievable, and she just tapped into his mindset. And she was Olympic finalist and Commonwealth champion herself. And I think because she had been on that journey, in her mind, her words, she believed she failed at a certain point, although she's accomplished some incredible things. And she wanted to make sure that he overcame those things, not solving problems for him. He's been through some real tough stuff as well and had to learn from that himself. But I think they've just tapped into everything, whether it's physical or mental, and it's just like he's an animal, absolute animal.
He's been over, he's trained with you guys, or he's spoken to the kids. How does he come across in person?
He's really humble. Him and Chad Leclos, given the fact that, you know, PT in Britain and Chad Leclos in South Africa are superstars. They are so humble and always find time for the kids. And you end up like in a position where you don't want to take advantage, because they're so nice, and you know they'll go and sign things for half an hour, and you know they'll go in there. Like Adam, I asked for a couple of my swimmers who were struggling at the point if he wouldn't mind taking a couple of them for lunch, just to have a chat with them. And obviously they bought him lunch, but like just to give up his time when he should have been at home having a nap before training and things like that. You know, when we do go across the UK and we see them at meets, they always come and say hi. It's not like, oh, that was Ash on the training camp and we'll ignore him now. Like that, you know what I mean? And they'll remember the swimmers' names. And I just think that's like the real small things which mean a lot to people. Like my swimmers, you can tell when they even acknowledge them or know their name or follow them on Instagram, as ridiculous as it is these days. They're like 10 feet tall and they're like, oh, Adam Peaty's following me on Instagram. And Chad's great at stuff like that as well.
That's great role models for the kids.
That's one of the reasons we try and give up some of the school pools for them, because I don't believe here in UAE we do get exposed to that level of athlete enough, and I need to selfishly let my kids and my athletes learn from those guys, because there's no one better to learn from when you've got Adam Beatty slogging it out on a lane next to you on a training camp with his coach, and you're in the pool with me, and you're looking across, and you're going to up your game. You're going to want to either impress him or, as a bigger perspective, understand what it takes to succeed.
What does he come out here for? Is it just a change of scenery when it's cold back home, or what's the reason? So
we've known them back from the UK, obviously, but they try and get out of Loughborough as much as possible just because of the miserable weather, and they always respond for some reason on training camps to different environments. So I think they try and take them out of the norm a little bit, the everyday life. Certainly for people like Adam, to get away from things like sponsorship things and things which kind of get put on them, which take a lot of their time, even though they have to kind of fulfill. So they come out here. They quite like Dubai because, if I'm honest, they like our pools, and we just give them the lanes they want. And we've helped them a little bit with accommodation, but also like the warehouse gym. Adam's like as alpha male as you get, and he just loves going in the warehouse gym when the music's on full pelt. And Kevin at warehouse gyms always let them use it for free, and been really supportive as well. And they just love the gym set. So he actually comes at a time of year where he has to get his crappiest part of his training in. His most brutal part of his training, and smash out the gym. They do all the longer stuff in the pool before it gets kind of to the fun side of training later on in the season.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, a few questions for you here. Your opinion: if they'd competed in the same era, who would have been the dominant force out of Spitz and Phelps?
This is like the Pele versus Messi or Ronaldo, isn't it?
Exactly.
No idea. To be really honest, I've never even watched Spitz's races. Obviously, he's a legend. I just think they're so hard to compare given the technology and training advancements we've got these days. Would Spitz have been faster with all the access Michael Phelps had now to altitude training and things like that? And would Phelps been able to have done it without all of that? So, no idea.
Okay, we'll leave that on for another day. In your opinion, what is the most impressive swimming achievement of all time? So is it Spitz's 7 golds and 7 world records? Is it Petey's 100-meter breaststroke? What's the best?
I think it has to be Michael Phelps' 8 golds, because he was in the transition of what I mentioned previously of the era of not having to specialise, whereas now you do. And I think to do the 8 golds and to do, I think 2 of his races were 20 or 25 minutes apart, semi-final to final, and to still be able to do that and perform. And let's be honest, I think it was 2 years out, he said he was going to do it. So to put that thing up there and have to step up, otherwise 7 golds would have been a failure. And that's ridiculous. So I actually listened to a really, really good podcast with Tom Daly the other day.
I listened to it as well, I think.
And I really underestimated his journey, because I didn't realise they had announced a few years before 2012 Olympics, when he was only 14, that he was one of Britain's hot medal prospects.
Yeah.
And for a 10 to 14-year-old boy to have to live up to that, train, and then perform. I think he was bronze then, was he?
He got bronze,
and then go into Rio as the favourite, and all of that. He has had to have pressure on himself his whole journey. He has never, from the age of 10, been allowed to necessarily just enjoy his sport without having that weight on his shoulders. And I really admire that. And I think there'd be so many examples of that out there.
Yeah, you underestimate it, don't you? Even with likes of Tom Daly, you kind of just take it as a given. But forget that he's going through the pressures, and his training will be ruthless as well.
Yeah. They do about 30 hours on the land, divers. I think their diving's only 8 to 10 hours. And
they're basically gymnasts, aren't they?
Yeah, incredible.
The next question I did have was, why was America so good? But you actually answered that earlier with the collegiate thing. Other countries catching up? Is it possible? Who's likely?
I think USA will always be the leaders given the college system, and until other countries implement a college system with scholarships like they do, I think it's untouchable with basketball, with swimming, with American football. Other countries are being a little bit smarter. So Britain, even Australia to an extent, Hungary, they've got smaller talent pools to pick from, and they're not the main sports in their country. You know, it's not football, it's not rugby. And I think they're really, really smart with their institutes. So, for example, British swimming and Australian swimming, I think is very, very similar. Even from like age 12, they've got regional talent pathways where they'll pick kids who are the best in the regions, come on like 1 or 2 day camps. And then at a national level, when you start making a national final, you go to phase 1 of a national program, phase 2, phase 3, and then you get onto the British swimming program. So I think they're really, really good at offering opportunities to the talent pool and then refining it at a top age. And I think Britain, Australia, a lot of the top countries now are being absolutely cutthroat with their funding, because again, gone are the days where they're going to fund 60 athletes just to keep swimming.
To turn up, yeah.
They're going to put major funding into their top 10 medal prospects and their tier 1, and then try and invest something like $6,000 a year, I think it was in the UK, into some of their best junior swimmers. So I think that's the way the world's going. But with the ISL, which is the International Swim League, coming on, there's also a bit of a change, because all of a sudden those swimmers who are maybe on the brink of national teams and not getting those refined opportunities actually can go and be a professional swimmer as part of these ISL teams. And all of a sudden, swimming is becoming a professional sport, which is a game changer. I
was going to ask you about the ISL. First of all, who's ploughing money into that?
It was set up by a guy called Constantine, who's one of the richest billionaires in the world, I think. He is an absolute swimming enthusiast. He, like a lot of the billionaires are obviously investing in football clubs. He just has a passion for swimming. I think his son swam on the Ukrainian national team, if I'm not wrong as well. So I think he's had this vision of where swimming could go, a little bit against FINA, who's our governing body. But he's developed this concept with James Gibson, who runs the swimming club at Energy Standard in Turkey, to create this professional sports platform for swimming. It's offered an opportunity for athletes to be on salaries and to earn bonuses, whereas that just wasn't there for the majority of swimmers at the moment, unless you're the very top swimmers. So at the moment, I think the concept is he's funding a lot of the events and the teams, but I think moving forwards, they all have to be independent franchises, and people will be able to set up swimming franchises is the long-term vision. Whether that will happen and whether there's enough interest in swimming, I don't know, if I'm honest. I obviously hope so as a swimming enthusiast, but I'm also well aware that a lot of people wouldn't choose to put the TV on and watch swimming.
Did you see much of it?
I watched all of it. I was a little bit of a swim geek. I watched all of them online. So, no, I enjoyed it. And I think what they were great at was learning as each round went on. Like for the first rounds, they had like none of the things come up. So TV viewers couldn't actually work out who was who. And then the next one, it was simple as put names on and things like that. And then they went away from times, because swimming is a very time-focused sport. And that's often how swimmers wrongly define themselves. So they went for a system which is purely points-based, and they didn't even have times on the board. And I think they then moved forward because people wanted times as well. And I think Katie Ledecky? I think Katie Ledecky broke a world record and it didn't count. So all of a sudden they've had to get world records approved. They've got a scoreboard. You might have seen that in London, where they've got the times on, but when you're watching it on TV or online, only the winning time comes up.
Okay.
So I think people just want to be able to grasp, actually, is that a good swim, or It just look good because everyone else is tired, or
yeah. And that's weird that they took the times away from everybody else.
Yeah.
When it's such an objective sport.
Yeah, I think they want people to be focused so much on the team and the points
and the league table and all this. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when you get to your major meet in the summer, which is obviously FINA Champs or the Olympics or Europeans, that's when you're focused on your times and things like that.
Have you heard any feedback from the swimmers?
Swimmers love it. I think coaches were sceptical, and the reason they put it early in the season is because they didn't want it to interfere with the Olympics and the major things. I think it was a risk trialing it in Olympic season, even though it's not now. That was actually the highlight of this season now, the ITL. So
yeah,
worked out well for them. But I think coaches were very sceptical, and even Greg Troy last night mentioned he was sceptical. He thought it'd take too much away from building the training base early in the year. But actually, the swimmers enjoyed it so much that he was finding they were coming back more motivated and racing harder earlier in the year than they would have done in heavy training.
Nice. Oh well, we'll see how that unfolds. Okay, got a little pop quiz for you here. And then we're almost done. So, first question is, which female swimmer holds more individual Olympic gold medals than anyone else?
Oh, gold medals.
Mm-hmm.
I actually saw this the other day online. I want to say Christina Egazegi, but I don't. Is it?
Correct. How many?
Yes. 5 or 6, I believe.
5.
5.
Hungarian. Well done. Good knowledge. Yeah. I had no idea that was the case. Okay, next one. Which female swimmer holds the most golds in total at the Olympics?
I actually don't know. I have no idea.
She's American, I think.
It can't be Ledecky.
No. Jenny Thompson.
No, I wouldn't have got that.
Nah. 8 gold medals, all relays.
Wow.
All relays. All relays, wow. Yeah. Weird one. How many medals of each colour does Michael Phelps hold?
23 gold?
Yep.
I think it's only like 2 or 4 silver. It's like really low.
In the middle.
3 silver, yeah. And a couple of bronzes. I'm not sure. I knew it was 23 golds.
Yeah, 23, 3 and 2. How many individual golds?
Wouldn't know exactly, but we're around 11 or 12 given the relays.
13.
Some
record.
We got half a point.
Okay, next one. Rebecca Adlington won gold medals in which 2 events at the 2008 Olympics?
The 400 and the 800 freestyles. And then did the same with bronzes in London.
Yeah, well done. Had you had a kid in between? Or
no,
afterwards. Okay, last one. What was unusual about the swimming event at the first Olympic Games? I can give you multiple choice if you want.
Yeah, let's go multiple choice.
Okay, A, there were no swimming events. B, competitors swam back to shore. C, nothing unusual. Or D, the pool was oval shaped.
I was just going to go with answer A.
No,
swimming is one of the originals.
It was one of the originals.
Didn't they do it in a river or something? I can't remember. There is an old story. Yeah.
They did it in the sea. They swam back to shore.
Oh, wow.
There you go. Now you know.
That was when open water swimming was truly invented.
Exactly. Okay, I think we're pretty much done. But last little thing. So obviously the coronavirus has scuppered absolutely everything, but you're hoping to get back into the pool soon. What's kind of coming on stream for Hamilton? What's the next big thing that you're working on?
I think for us, again, it's going to be a short-term goal of getting everyone back on board, and whether that's going to be smaller groups and things like that to start with. I don't really know what's going to be happening, but I think for Hamilton, we just want to continue to lead the way a little bit. There are a lot of other clubs doing some really good things now across other sports in the UAE. And I think we're all learning from each other in that aspect. And especially now, we've been forced to think outside the box a little bit more, whether it was as simple as a Zoom session with kids. So we just want to be able to do what we do, but do it better, and to a higher level. We want to use different platforms to engage parents a little bit more and help the education of parents to be able to support the swimmer. So we want to be able to use things like that a little bit more. We want to continue to evolve the competition program here. Obviously, we support the schools, we support the clubs. We have the Middle East Championships in February every year. And we want to continue to make sure that that's kind of the pinnacle event for us each year, and try and get some more international swimmers each year as well. From a personal point of view, I would like to try and help swimmers on that journey to get to the Olympic Games, because that is ultimately the pinnacle of our sport. But if that doesn't happen, as long as they come out good people and enjoy what they do, I'm quite happy as well.